Daniel and the Lion's Den, from the Abeka curriculum. Enjoy! God's people had turned away from him, and God allowed their land to be conquered by other nations. The king of Babylon came to Jerusalem and captured many young men and took them back to his own country. One of these young men was Daniel. Even though he was only a teenager, Daniel loved and served God. He put God first, and for many years God made him an important advisor to the different kings who ruled the foreign land to which he had been taken. Daniel was an elderly man when a new king, Darius, took over the government. Darius appointed 120 men to oversee the 120 provinces of his realm. He now needed 3 faithful and able men to be the presidents over the 120 to see that they ruled faithfully. He chose Daniel to be one of his presidents. He had heard of Daniel's great service to the previous kings, so the king appointed Daniel to be the chief of the 3 presidents. King Darius recognized that an excellent spirit was in Daniel. Daniel was just, honest, upright, and submissive to his king and the laws of the land, and could be counted on for loyalty, wisdom, and good advice. Whatever Daniel did, he did with all his heart, for he knew that in serving those whom God had placed over him, he was serving God. When the 2 other presidents learned that Daniel had been put over them, they became very jealous of Daniel. They possibly wondered why this older Jewish man should be put over them. He had come to Babylon years before as a captive from Judah, and they reasoned that he certainly did not deserve to be the chief of the 3 presidents. So, filled with envy, these men began to plot against Daniel. If only they could find something wrong with his life or his service, some dishonesty, some bribery, some unfaithfulness, then they could persuade the king to get rid of Daniel. Envy, or jealousy, is a sin that makes people unhappy, spiteful, and cruel. Notice how unhappy you are when you become jealous of a brother or sister, or a classmate who has something that you do not have, or does something that you cannot do. We need to ask God to help keep the sin of jealousy away from us and instead give us a love for those around us. When we truly love someone, we are happy when that person receives something or is able to do something special. These men did not know God, and their pagan gods had nothing to offer them that would drive away the sin of envy, so they kept looking for ways to get back at Daniel for his promotion. But try as they might, they could find no fault in Daniel. The jealous men thought about how to get rid of Daniel. One of them suggested they could accuse Daniel of something concerning his religion. Everyone knew that Daniel had never worshipped the gods of Babylon or the gods of Medo-Persia. He worshipped only his Jewish God, and he was very careful in his devotion to his God. The 2 jealous presidents talked with some of the governors and princes, and together they made a plan. They would go to King Darius and convince him to make a law of the Medes and the Persians that nobody could pray to any god or any man except the king for 30 days. If anyone prayed or asked anything of anyone or of any god during those 30 days, he would be thrown into a den of lions. These leaders knew Daniel well enough to know that he would never stop praying to his God, and thus when he disobeyed this new law, they would be rid of him forever. The 2 presidents and several princes came before the king with their request. "King Darius, live forever," their spokesman said. "All of the presidents, governors, princes, counselors, and captains have consulted together." This was a lie, of course. All of the leaders had not consulted together. They had left out Daniel, the chief of the presidents. "All of us have consulted together," the lying leaders continued, "and we would like for you to make a law stating that any man who prays to any god or man for 30 days except you, O king, should be thrown into the den of lions." The king was flattered. His chief men were indeed loyal to him. The law would make him great in the eyes of all his people, and he liked that idea very much. Their flattery may have kept him from asking if all the presidents, governors, and leaders had agreed to this, and thus he did not even consider Daniel. Now, O king, to establish this wonderful law, you need to sign it so that it cannot be changed according to the law of the Medes and Persians, applauding politicians said. The Medes and Persians believed that once a law was signed by the king, even he did not have power to change the law. King Darius was pleased with the new law. It would exalt him in the eyes of the people and make his position as king honored and secure. Darius happily signed the decree, making it into a law that could not be changed. For many years, Daniel had practiced the habit of praying 3 times a day, at morning, at noon, and at night. No doubt he prayed at other times as he went about his work, but he set aside those 3 times each day to do nothing but talk to his God. Do you have a time when you talk to God every day? You probably pray before meals, before a test, at school, or when you are tempted to do something wrong. But it is important to also have a special time each day when you pray and read God's Word. Maybe not 3 times a day like Daniel, but at least once a day would be good. Daniel had a special place in his house where he went to pray. It was a room with windows that opened toward Jerusalem, where the temple of God had been before it was destroyed by the Babylonians. For several years, Daniel had been praying at his window facing Jerusalem. Daniel prayed for his Jewish people that they would truly be sorry for their sins. He confessed their sins and his own sins to God. He asked for forgiveness. He prayed that his people might be restored to their land of Israel. When Daniel heard about the new law that King Darius had signed, he did not stop praying, for praying was an important part of his life. He could not stop. 3 times a day he continued to pray to God with his windows open toward Jerusalem. He did not go to a dark closet to pray or cover the window so no one could see him praying. No, Daniel prayed at his open window just as he had always prayed. Daniel decided he would keep on praying just as before, even though he knew the consequences could be a horrible death in a den of lions. No matter the cost, Daniel would be true to his God. As Daniel prayed, his enemies were nearby, just waiting to hear him pray, and sure enough, they saw and heard him praying to his God. Satisfied that they had succeeded in their plan to get rid of Daniel, they immediately rushed to the king. Daniel's enemies could hardly wait to accuse him to their king. They probably were very excited as they gathered before King Darius. The spokesman said, "O king, did you not sign a law that anyone who prayed to any man or to any god other than you for 30 days would be thrown into the den of lions?" The king answered, "Yes, indeed I did, according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which cannot be changed." "Well," went on the spokesman, "we think you ought to know that Daniel, the captive from Judah, does not obey your law, O king. He is continuing to pray to his God 3 times every day. We have seen him and heard him." The king's heart sank. He realized that he had been tricked. How could he throw his most trusted president to the lions? King Darius admired and loved Daniel. He depended very much on Daniel's wisdom. Could he possibly find a loophole in his law so he could save Daniel from death? Darius tried his best to find a way to deliver Daniel from the lion's den, but the enemies of Daniel kept reminding King Darius that no law of the Medes and Persians signed by the king could ever be changed, and they probably said that if he ever changed a law, he would lose the respect of all the people of his kingdom. There was no other way but to put Daniel into the den of lions, and so with great sorrow King Darius gave the command. Soldiers went to Daniel's house and arrested him. He had not suffered such treatment since his younger days when he had been taken from Jerusalem as a captive. They brought him to the opening of the den. The hungry lions could be heard growling as they paced back and forth below. King Darius paced nervously nearby. He said to Daniel, "Thy God whom thou servest continually, he will deliver thee." With the growls of the ferocious beasts far below, Daniel was lowered into the den. Quickly the den was closed and sealed with a double seal, that of the king and also that of the lords. Daniel's enemies were taking no chances. They wanted no one to be able to get Daniel out of that den. Satisfied they had gotten rid of Daniel at last, they left the den of lions to return to their homes for the night, and King Darius returned to his palace. As Daniel was lowered into the dark den amidst the growling lions, to his amazement, the huge lions did not jump on him. They did not even snarl. They came close to him but did not harm him, for God had sent his angel and closed the lions' mouths. Maybe Daniel smiled as he curled up to go to sleep for the night. Close to him was a lion. Perhaps Daniel pillowed his head on its soft body. Surely he must have praised God as he rested that night. Meanwhile, King Darius got no sleep that night. His servants urged him to eat, but he refused to taste a bite of food. He had no appetite. He dismissed the musicians that came to entertain him. He could only think about what might have been happening to Daniel. As soon as the day began, King Darius pulled his royal robe about him and commanded a servant, "Take me to the lion's den at once." Others joined him as he left for the lion's den. Once there, the king had the seal broken and the stone removed. He then peered through the darkness into the den. He called to Daniel in a pitiful voice, "Daniel, servant of the living God, is your God, whom you continually serve, able to deliver you from the lions?" Daniel did not forget his manners, even in a pit surrounded by lions. "O king, live forever," he politely answered. "My God has sent his angel and has shut the lions' mouths, that they have not hurt me, because I am innocent of doing anything against God or against you, O king." The king was overjoyed to hear Daniel's voice. He called for his servants to come at once and lower the ropes into the den so Daniel could be pulled out. To everyone's amazement, Daniel climbed out, none the worse for having spent a night with the lions. Once again, God took care of his servant who trusted in him, and God showed his great power to a heathen king. Then the king commanded that Daniel's accusers and their families be thrown into the den. This time there was no angel in the den to protect them. The starving lions leaped upon their bodies and broke them to pieces before their bodies reached the bottom of the den. Their jealousy had finally destroyed them and their loved ones. King Darius made another decree, sending it to all people in his empire. He commanded everyone to fear and to tremble before the God of Daniel, because, as he said, he is the living God and steadfast forever, and his kingdom that which shall not be destroyed, and his dominion shall be even unto the end. He delivereth and rescueth, and he worketh signs and wonders in heaven and in earth, who hath delivered Daniel from the power of the lions. Thus the heathen King Darius came to believe in the true God. When King Darius came to know the Lord, multitudes of people heard about the true God, and all because Daniel had been faithful to his God. Will you dare to be a Daniel and stand up for what is right, even though everyone else is doing wrong? Even when others may try to hurt you for it? Remember, God is the ruler of the lions, the kings, and all of mankind, and he will never let any harm come to you that is not in his perfect will. Daniel loved God more than fame, more than friendship, more than life itself, and God took care of Daniel and used his testimony to tell many people about himself. Let's ask God to make us true to him, like Daniel was.